Hi again, it's your buddy Bob, and welcome to another episode of Rock and Roll Travelogue. We're on the hunt for the pop and rock artists across the country from the 1950s to 1990s. And today we're in Atlanta. We're going to check out, a Rock and Roll Hall of Fame artist from the 60s, 70s, and 80s, another from the 50s and 60s, and then two more acts from the 90s. One of whom is in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Well, the first stop is at 200 Joseph E. Lowry Boulevard, Southwest in Atlanta. This is the home of the Mount Moriah Baptist Church, where 4-year-old Gladys Knight started singing. She'd later tour with a gospel group around the southern U.S. At age 8, she won a talent contest on the Ted Mack Amateur Hour on nationwide TV. And at age 10, she and her brothers and cousins started singing together. One of the cousins was named James Pip Woods, and the kids took his nickname to come up with a stage name, Gladys Knight and the Pips. They were a Motown act from 1966 to 73. They scored with the original of I Heard It Through the Grapevine. And a year later, Motown's Marvin Gaye covered it to great success in 1968. I bet you wonder how I knew. Well, I heard it through the grapevine. Well, the group left Motown for Buddha Records in the 70s. They had a number one with Midnight Train to Georgia. In 1973, Gladys had a number one in the 80s with That's What Friends Are For, along with Dionne Warwick, Elton John, and Stevie Wonder. That song was written by the great Burt Bacharach and his wife Carol Bayer Sager, and we talked about both of them in a previous Rock and Roll Travelogue episode. Now, one of the very early gigs for Gladys Knight and the Pips was here at 186.5 Auburn Avenue in downtown Atlanta. This is the Peacock Club, and this was the club for Black, that is African-American entertainers. Sam Cooke, Ray Charles, many others would play here, and it was a very important early step in the careers of Gladys Knight and the Pips. Now, the Peacock Club is still around today. It features reggae and hip-hop. Gladys Knight, an Atlanta native, has a street named after her. It's Gladys Knight Highway. It's at 14th and Peachtree Southwest in Atlanta. Gladys Knight and the Pips are in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. And here's your host with the group at the Old Music Carnival in Cleveland in 1974. Well, one of the top 5 selling girl groups of all time was formed in Atlanta. They were named TLC for the first names of the original trio, Tion, Lisa, and Crystal. And they did hip-hop. Boy, did they do hip-hop. The trio that attained the success dropped Crystal and added Rosanda Thomas. So Tion, T-Boz Watkins, Lisa, Left Eye Lopes, and Rosanda Chili Thomas went on to record 9 top 10 hits in the 90s, including 4 number ones, Creep, Waterfalls, No Scrubs, and Unpretty, TLC. Well, Lisa Left Eye Lopes was very much in the news in the 90s. She was the girlfriend of NFL receiver Andre Rison, and she was sentenced to probation for burning down his house. Sadly, in 2002, she died in a car crash in Honduras. In terms of the fire in the home, she set his sneakers on fire, which then led to the house burning down. Lisa Lopes is buried in suburban Lithonia. We're going to visit there for another pop star coming up in just a couple of moments. Now, I was told that there was a wonderful mural of TLC at 670 Terry Street Southeast near Grant Park. So when I got there, this is what I saw. No mural, the building for sale, actually for lease. Nobody in the neighborhood remembers when the mural was taken down, although there is a fun one across the street. I'm not sure who this is, but it is a fun mural. Out to Lithonia, about 30 miles from Atlanta, here lived a young girl named Brenda Mae Tarpley. Brenda lived all over Atlanta with her family, but it was apparent that she could sing from a very young age. Rockabilly and pop described the songs of this young woman who became known as Brenda Lee. Here is Brenda Lee Lane at Lithonia Park. The sign is a little worn, as you can see. Brenda Lee's biggest hit, by the way, was in 1960 called I'm Sorry. Now, whether you were around for the peak of Brenda Lee or not, I'm sure you know the song Rockin' Around the Christmas Tree by Brenda Lee, and you may remember it was featured in the movie Home Alone in the 1990s. Known as Little Miss Dynamite, after all, she's just 4'9", Brenda Lee was the first woman who was inducted into both the Country Music Hall of Fame and the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. More on Brenda Lee in a moment when we get to Augusta, Georgia, where she spent some time as well. Well, Lakewood Terrace Southeast is our next stop. This was the Dungeon, where the Dungeon family, a southern hip-hop group of bands, would practice. It was in the basement of Rico Wade's mother's house. Rico was part of the Organized Noise, a production enterprise that worked on material for TLC, whom we talked about a moment ago, CeeLo Green and his band, the Goody Mob, and also a group known as Outkast. Now, Outkast became one of the most influential hip-hop acts of all time, comprised of Big Boy, that was Antoine Patton, and Andre 3000, that was Andre Benjamin. And Andre is considered one of the all-time top rappers. Now, the two guys met as teens here at the Lenox Square Mall at 3393 Peachtree Northeast in an affluent area of Atlanta. Well, as of 2025, Outkast will be in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Up to suburban Marietta, Georgia now for Walton High School. This is in Cobb County at 1590 Bill Murdoch Road. Now, of all the high schools I've visited on Rock and Roll Travelogue, this has to be the most amazing of all. Just take a look around. We're here because this is where Rich Robinson and his older brother Chris went to high school. They become the Black Crowes. Now, before forming the band, Chris would attend college at Wofford College in Spartanburg, South Carolina, not too far away. And later, he'd be married to the actress Kate Hudson. Of course, she's the daughter of Goldie Hawn. Shake Your Moneymaker was the band's first hit album in 1990. Hit singles from the album were Hard to Handle, Twice as Hard, and She Talks to Angels. Hard to Handle, by the way, was co-written over 20 years earlier by Otis Redding, just before he died. The Black Crowes were veterans of CBGB in New York City that we visited on an earlier Rock and Roll Travelogue episode. The Black Crowes will be inducted in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in 2025. Well, let's jump back in the car 2 hours to Athens, Georgia, home of the Bulldogs at the University of Georgia. Two students from the University of Georgia met each other at this record store at 197 East Clayton in downtown Athens. Wuxtry Record Shop is where Peter Buck, who also worked there, met Michael Stipe. Now, they agreed to form a band that became REM. The band had hits in the 80s and the 90s, a period, of course, that we cover here on Rock and Roll Travelogue at Hits Beyond. They're most remembered for Losing My Religion in 1991, and REM is in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Here's some of downtown Athens. Enjoyed our stay in Athens, and here's the best part about it, as far as I'm concerned, because it wasn't even expected. One last stop on this episode. One of the fun parts for me on the journey is meeting all kinds of people along the way. So one night we're at a pizza shop, I believe in Muscle Shoals, Alabama, and we're being served by a well-traveled, savvy young woman who started talking to us. We mentioned the journey, and she said, boy, once you get to Athens, Georgia, you've just got to stop at the tree that owns itself. And I said, what? The tree that owns itself? Well, after leaving Wuxtry Records, we drove a few minutes up to 277 South Finley at Deering, and here's the tree. It's hundreds of years old, although the original fell over in 1942 and was replanted from its acorns. This is the tree with a sign in front. Now, William H. Jackson was Colonel William H. Jackson, and his words go back to the late 19th century. The sign reads as follows: for and in consideration of the great love I bear this tree and the great desire I have for its protection for all time, I convey entire possession of itself and all land within 8 feet of the tree on all sides. What a great story. The tree that owns itself. If you're ever in Athens, Georgia, be sure to stop in this quiet neighborhood and check out the tree deeded to itself. Well, that's another episode of Rock and Roll Travelogue. I'm your buddy Bob, and next time we stay in Georgia, we'll visit Augusta and Macon, several Hall of Fame artists in those cities. Until then, good heart and stout luck.
You are watching WCTV, Wadsworth Community Television.